we're talking about state-owned enterprises. This is why the president addressed the heads of SOEs a couple of weekends ago in Abitifi. He said CEOs and board chairpersons of some of these entities have for a long time been overlooked when blame is being apportioned for the downturn of Ghana's economy, with the blame rather going to sector ministers and he, the president. So he told them, especially the bottom five, to sit up. Let's listen to him.
It is unacceptable that specified entities who together control half of the nation's assets to contribute less than 5% to the nation's GDP. As you are well aware, my expectation of you is to contribute some 30% to our GDP. I entreat you to reflect deeply on our nation's current situation, what your contribution has been, and what you can do to help turn things around. Further, specified entities must leverage the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfTA, Secretariat, to develop intra-Africa trade opportunities, as it is our responsibility to increase our exports as well as ensure food security. I've taken judicial notice of the league table and would admonish underperforming entities, especially the bottom five, to sit down. Board chairs and entity heads have for a long time been overlooked when blame is being apportioned for the downturn in Ghana's economic fortunes, with the flag going largely to sector ministers and to Mr. President, whilst others receive the backlash for the nation's current problems. The time has come for you to own up to this responsibility and take the front stage in our nation's development.
Well, so there we go. That's what the president had to say. Ray, I mean, the situation is dire, let's be clear. You can't take half of our resources and give us a turnover of 5% of our GDP. You can't be making massive losses while we spend a fortune on you. But that is the story of many state-owned enterprises.
Yes, and you just made it look like, since 2016, I remember this conversation about state-owned enterprise. Let's go back to those years where we felt that the Nkrumah enterprise, about 300 of them, some of them were not properly positioned and they're not delivering results. Even though up to today, we are still trying to revive, for example, the Commander Sugar Factory. And it's not working like the way we thought it would work, but still, we are working at it. And government went to even try to put it back on its feet. Remember in 2016, this conversation about we not being able to put it back into operation temporarily, and people went there reporting that it was operating but not operating. Let's be clear. Most of these institutions, if they were in private hands, would either have been collapsed, people prosecuted for causing massive losses in the areas involved in there, and turned over to a new company or a new group to run. Since 2017, we've equally been recording losses that sometimes doesn't make sense. We deliberately had SIGA because we thought state-owned enterprise, joint venture companies, and there's a third group that they put to it, were not functioning properly. So state interest group was formed deliberately to work at this. I remember when the current or the incoming religion minister, he was the first SIGA boss, Stephen Asamoah Boateng. I had an interview with him. He said, no, we're going to crack the whip. Nobody is going to do what they did previously with these institutions and still function because they are important. They are contributing to many, many problems we are finding in this country. And they are even the sectors who wanted to create jobs, but they're not creating the jobs. And some of the people there, they don't need to be there in the first place. What did we do? In the last 6 years, we just added on some deputies. A single entity may have 3 or 4 deputies because we couldn't find jobs for them in the main ministry or what they call deputy ministerial positions. We added them to some of these slots. We moved on to add more debt to it. I reached the point. SNIT was discussing whether it was going to offload some of these, even in hotel firms. You get what I'm trying to say? We also went to the point that ISA did a report and told the people of this republic that 9 billion in a single year, 9 billion was the losses made by 10 of our state-owned enterprises within the energy sector. 10 of them. 9 billion put together. And what happened then? I'm not going to go back to the fact that it was similar debt in the sector that led us to set up ESLA, Energy Sector Levies Act, which we are told is one of the contributory factors to our current problems that we have today, because we have so much debt within the ESLA, because we did the collateralization and all the securities happened in that sector. So everything we have done shows we are either incompetent or we are deliberately running down these institutions. But why did we need them? Because a manufacturing sector is required for every country to progress. That is where you create the jobs. That's where people actually can go to work and earn something. From the 350, we have decided not to add on necessarily, but to rather collapse a huge section of them. We put some on joint venture, and the idea was that if we get others come on board to support it, we will grow and make it better. But what has been the latest report on it and the suggestion that we'll be making losses in that area? People have suggested that so far as government has a hand in it, it will not work. Because first, we will not put the right people in there. If we put the right people in there, we will make it impossible for them to operate by the kind of rules we give them. For example, the people say this is the tariff we need to operate fully. We in the Republic of Ghana, mindful of the other circumstances, will say, no, we can't give you that tariff because it will affect other people. So take 10% of the original amount, which means they are accumulating debt over a period of time, which will later on be asked to come and pay. So exactly how is it that when private people are managing the same set of businesses, they operate it and operate it well? But when the same set of people are put into government positions, they cannot operate it properly. Listen, some of the people that we are pulled into some of our positions, some of these state-owned enterprises, when they were in private enterprise, here in Ghana and elsewhere, they were performing very well. What is this? What is it with our structure here that they cannot function the same way? Is it the cronyism? Is it the deliberate stealing? Is it the non-functional structures they have in place? And again, did we have any proper plan to retool these institutions from 2017? You ask yourself that question. Because some of them were grinding to a halt. Did we just change management, or we gave them what it takes for them to properly manage these institutions and run it properly? And yes, the other time we were told about how MDAs owe some of these institutions. If government is also owing the same set of people, how do we then call them incompetent? You ask me. You answer that question for me. The guy has been disabled from functioning. He has political ties, so he cannot come out and say, you are disabling me from functioning. How then are we able to ensure that the people we are putting in some of these institutions end up functioning properly? We can go through a list of them, and we know, in fact, we have published them here before. We started mentioning and their level of liabilities that they have accrued over and the losses they've been making. Some of them will explain to you that even the board, a certain board, which is supposed to function properly, the people who go there only take allowances. Some people have retired in this country. The only job they do is go and sit on boards, take an allowance and go home. No contribution.
And some of them have even been assigned 4-wheel drives as well.
Yes. And yet they don't make any meaningful contribution to the function of these institutions.
Well, listen, today I think we've got 3 of the best people you'd ever want to hear on a conversation like this, which hopefully can result in a turnaround of the fortunes of our SOEs. Joseph Cudjoe is a Minister for Public Enterprises, an Honourable Member of Parliament for Ifya constituency in Sekondi Takrady, which is in the Western region, obviously. Ken Thompson is the CEO of Dalex Finance. He's a thought leader on business and economic matters, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. And then the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency. He's got his eyes on all their books. Dr. Eric Oduro Osae joins us as well. Gentlemen, good morning to you all. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Not bad. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. You're looking well. Well done. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you. Okay, all right. If you don't mind, I'd love to start with you, Mr. Cudjoe, because the president was clear. With 50% of our state's resources, state-owned enterprises are contributing 5% to GDP. Obviously, that's problematic. The president is not happy about the fact that you don't even get as much blame for our current economic situation as the ministers and the president does, even though you are contributing to it. Let me ask you this. In the most recent report, they made losses of over 2 billion.
Yeah.
Do you feel responsible for this poor performance?
You talking about the state feeling responsible,
No,
or me,
you
Joseph,
as minister,
Okay,
for public enterprises?
So how recent are we looking at? Let me greet your audience, your listeners to begin with. The most recent compiled report is the 2020
Yes.
State Ownership Report, and my appointment came in 2021. So I came to meet the report.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you were appointed in 21. That's correct.
Exactly.
You're right about that.
Exactly.
Okay, so your report hasn't come yet.
No.
Okay.
You know, anybody who follows financial reporting would know that 2020 end of year 2021, when I had been vetted, appointed in February and vetted subsequently, and appointment coming in April, it means I have a half-year report to talk to, so to speak, for 2021. Nonetheless, I would rather say, let's look at the government arrangements for oversighting the sector to deal with the issue you are talking about, which relate to the loss-making operations and high indebtedness, triggered by high borrowing by the state enterprises and slow delivery of inefficiency. These characterize them. But should we say any person or individual is responsible? If we do the analysis, I would say this characterization has dates back to independent time, when Kwame Nkrumah had done his big push of industrialization, and we had almost everything was being produced in Ghana, even including automobiles. Ken Thompson, you allude to this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
that's Ghana was even producing automobiles. Adom was one of the models, and Boafo another model. Just when South Korea had also started their Kias and the Hyundais. So, if we go back to where the problem began, it's been since independence, but the trend continued, and all that at a point in time, what happened was we had State Enterprises Commission and Divestiture Implementation Committee, and the role they were playing was funny to me. From a consultant viewpoint, looking at the state SOE sector, what you would see was that State Enterprises Commission will sign performance contracts with them over the period they had oversight purview of the SOEs. They sign performance contract every year, but the result of the contract or the outcome at the end of the year, no review was done. And when the company operates for some time and it collapses, then it is passed on to the Divestiture Implementation Committee to divest it or sell it off. That was the model we're operating. So it was this government in 2017 that decided to tighten the oversight and bring in a whole restructuring of how oversight of the state enterprises are to be done. And that is what led to the promulgation of the SIGA Act that's Act 990 in 2019, August. And then thereafter, everything started changing. Okay, so today, we coming into this position as Minister for Public Enterprises, there's another leg of the oversight which I have screwed in to help, which is Parliament. Interestingly, there was a committee of Parliament, that's Committee on Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprises. And that committee, even it is referred to in the Constitution, and Parliament had a committee oversighting state enterprises, but their efforts were not as intense and not as how do I put it, tight as would have been expected to bring the results that we desire. Coming in, what I have written to Parliament, and now working with a committee, and the committee is really having its permit me to say, Kane, also at the back of the state enterprises. And it's been interesting, the kind of contribution we're making to ensure that they operate as desired.
Have you had reason to sack anybody for poor performance yet?
The reasons will unfold. You have to sack somebody would mean a measured non-performance, so that it doesn't become an emotional issue.
So against the target.
Exactly. So now, let me end by saying Parliament is now oversighting vigorously. SIGA is oversighting vigorously, and the space for divestiture and perform, collapse, divest, that model is no longer what we're doing. And that is why now you see the president, unlike maybe historical, if you roll back to the 60s, we have not seen a president charge performance of state enterprises like what is happening.
Well, he said the bottom 5 should sit up.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't
No, I'm
know if
saying
that's unprecedented.
But what I'm saying is, now the focus, why are we even here discussing state enterprises? It is because things have changed. That's why it is now a topic, an issue that is regularly on radio.
But
and
that's
on
what
TV.
you suggest is sort of an unprecedented effort of the president.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's
It
because
has
of
never
this
happened before.
Unprecedented effort that we're having this conversation.
I'm saying this oversight structure has never happened before.
Right.
Nobody has brought state enterprises performance to the front burner than it has happened in the era of the NPP administration today.
Right.
And that's why we have SIGA, that's a state interest and governance authority charged with a mandate and backed by the law to do what it's doing now. So we are having them in focus, and every result that we desire from them, like you alluded to, is what drives us every day.
Okay, just before I bring in Mr. Thompson, just listening to you, a few things have stood out as the reasons for the periodic systemic failure of state-owned enterprises, long before even you were appointed. I'm going to list the ones that I was able to note. I may have missed some, but at least we can agree that they are largely starved of resources. They are often prevented from charging realistic tariffs and so forth. They have become heavily indebted because they are unable to foot their bills. They are often populated with political appointees. They are not. They don't have people appointed on merit as often as they should. Poor accountability mechanisms, and almost no consequence for failure. These things have been happening. Whose fault are they?
Interestingly, when you were mentioning the problems, I wish your listeners were viewers, seeing me nodding to them.
Oh, yes,
Because
yes. You are agreeing.
they are all true. And you know whose fault it is? I must say, governance. You know,
Who's that?
these state enterprises have been there. They keep being incorporated. They keep being formed. New ones keep coming. But it's not today. It's collective responsibility. You and I, who have never shown our interest in their performance in the past, until we've brought it to the front burner today. Now, all these issues you've mentioned, right, I can say today, we are taking them together, and especially you, let me cite instances. Can you believe that as in 2017, Ghana Publishing Company had not published its own account, had not prepared account for 10 years or so prior? Can you believe it? And can you believe BOST, as we know, since its establishment, if you count, you may get about 29 years of its existence, had never had an annual general meeting before. What kind of corporate practice is that? Are you getting my point? So, until this restructuring came about and a certain categorization of the state enterprises, let me throw in the terms as backed by the law. We have specified entities which come in three categories. Three categories: SOEs, that is state-owned enterprises, who have been set up for commercial purposes, and there are about 52 of them. SOEs, state-owned enterprises. And then there are the joint venture companies, which is partnership between government and a private owner, and those are also in there. And then
About how many?
about 46 or so, if my numbers are serving me right. And then there are the other state entities, OSEs. Other state entities. That one, I remember the number exactly. It's 77.
Okay.
So, other state entities.
Could you,
They are
just for the purpose of our listeners who might
Yeah.
be quite new to this, since you pointed out that it hasn't always enjoyed the spotlight, can you give us at least one well-known example of each, just so we get in our heads what you mean when you say SOE,
Okay.
what you mean when you say JVC
Okay.
and OSE?
SOE. One that will be clear for us to understand is, for example, Gayhawk.
Gihawk. Okay.
They are in alcoholic
Yes.
beverage manufacturing.
Okay.
Okay. Set up, go make profit. And then the JV, Goyle, for example. You know, Goyle is listed. So
Yeah.
individual shareholders are in there. And states, through state institutions, also have shares in there. So that is a typical JVC, or joint venture company. And then OSC, predominantly they are the public operations and the regulatory agencies. Petroleum Commission is one. Gridco is even categorized as SOE.
Okay.
They're supposed to make profit. GBC is in the category of OSC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
And
GBC is not supposed to make profit,
no, they have to deliver public service.
so they are not
So
supposed to make.
The motivation there is efficiency.
So they do not have
Profit
targets.
motive. Exactly. They don't have profit motive.
I'm asking if they have targets,
No, efficiency target when it comes to performance contracts.
but
The-
not
the-
profit.
not profits.
Okay.
Yes. So those are examples.
Okay.
As for the OSCs, we know them a lot. Any regulator in the system, from FDA to Standard Authority to all of them, are all OSC, Land Commission,
Okay.
all of them. So
Okay.
so those are three categorization of specified entities.
Yeah.
And I can say the specified entities register as we have published. Note, we are yet to publish because we've received cabinet approval that these entities are now included in that portfolio of state specified entities, SOEs, other state entities, and the JVCs. It's 175 of them.
Right.
175. So you can see their size and dominance in the economy. And that's why the president is saying they have a role to play to contribute to the GDP of the country.
Okay. Now, we've been joined by Dr. Eric Oduro Osae. He's the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency, which means that he's got his eyes firmly in the books of all of these specified entities. And I'm glad he's arrived just before I brought in Mr. Ken Thompson, because I would love for Mr. Thompson to include the thoughts of both Mr. Cudjoe and Dr. Osae in his submissions. So, Dr. Osae, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the time this morning. The president is concerned that the specified entities are not pulling their weight. It does beg a belief when you think of it. 50% of our assets producing 5% of our GDP. It's not ideal. But you see what's happening in their books. I understand that there are certain institutions, organizations that you can't really give profit targets to, as the minister has indicated. So you can't expect all of them to make a profit. But why are the losses so huge? Where are the areas of wastage, or what are we doing in there that is creating such a terrible picture year on year?
Thank you very much, and let me apologize for coming late. I was on another program, so I sent in my apologies ahead of time. I think something new is happening with the establishment of SIGA. Previously, we didn't have this arrangement in place, and some of the losses that we're witnessing today or in the past years can be arguably explained to be carryover losses, because there have been inefficiencies in the past that have been carried over. The SIGA Act was passed in 2019. Operationalization started in 2020. So arguably, certain control systems are being put in place effectively 2020, 2021, 2023. So we would see the fruits of the foundation we've laid from 2023, 2024 onwards. That notwithstanding, like the Honorable Minister said, it is not all the institutions that are arguably supposed to make profit. In fact, even if they make profit, we can't call it profit, because they are expected to break even and provide, as it were, essential services. The challenge I have seen in the public sector, which affects some of these SOEs, is about the salaries that are paid to some of the people working in these institutions. Because before profit can be declared, you should deduct all your expenses, including salaries. So one of the areas I think SIGA is working on is working towards rationalizing the salaries of the specified entities or operators in the specified entities according to sectors. Once they are able to rationalize the salaries, I think it will help. The other side is also the corporate governance.
Maybe an example or two, without naming anybody, but can you give us some examples of institutions where the salaries ends up being a dent, a big dent in their...
Well, I will not be pushed to mention institutions, but I think when you go to the energy sector, the players there have a certain level of salaries they earn. So if you are not able to rationalize it, you end up not even getting any dividend for government, and you can only pay dividend when you declare profit. So when the expenses are so high that you are not able to declare profit, it means government will not even get any dividend. The other side of it is the corporate governance aspect of the operations of these specified entities, and here SIGA has also worked on a corporate governance code. But I think the Institute of Directors recently collaborated with SIGA to develop a consolidated corporate governance code. It is critical because when you look at the specified entities, the CEOs are arguably expected to be appointed by the board. But when you look at the constitution, the way the constitution is crafted, the president appoints some of the CEOs and then also appoint the board. So then board-CEO relationship can also create a problem for the functioning of the organization. So it's another area that we need to manage, you see. And I also think that, well, it's all about control systems. And I give SIGA thumbs up because SIGA has done a lot of work in the past 2 years, making sure that they produce management accounts. And it's a requirement under the public financial management regulations for them to produce management accounts. And then after that, their annual accounts. And if you are a specified entity under our laws, you have to comply with the Public Financial Management Act because government has interest, and also comply with the Companies Code. So that if you report under the Companies Act, fine, you have satisfied the Register of Companies, but you have to also satisfy government by making sure that your balance sheet and everything gets to SIGA, it gets to controller, so controller can consolidate it. Some of these institutions were not producing those financial reports. So eventually, we consolidate the final accounts of Ghana, and it excludes some of these institutions. Meanwhile, government borrows for these institutions. And when government borrows, Ministry of Finance will record it as a liability. So once they are not producing the balance sheet, the asset bit is not there. So you see the balance sheet of Ghana, and it looks as if the country doesn't
Only
have
debt,
anything. And that is where the problem is. So SIGA, together with the IAA and Audit Service and Controller, now we are all cracking the whip to get these specified entities to produce their financial statement. And this financial statement must be produced in accordance with IPSAS for the government sector and then IFRS for the Registrar General sector. So they have a dual reporting relationship. That is what has been missing from that system all this while. Thankfully, there's a wake-up call, and we are trying to resolve those issues. So that is the challenge. So if the president is talking about the losses, it is not only about the losses, we're also concerned about taking their assets on board so that it will balance the liabilities. Because most of the borrowing government does, when you look at our borrowing report for 2021, it indicates clearly that government borrowed for some of these institutions. In the absence of their balance sheet, in the balance sheet of the Republic of Ghana, we record only liabilities. So it's a big challenge, and it's an area that if we are to keep our eyes on, the balance sheet of the Republic of Ghana would improve.
I mean, if you have such big governance gaps, we've just heard about how BOST in its entire existence has never held an
AGM,
general meeting. Why are they able to get away with it?
You see, it's a corporate governance issue. It's a corporate governance issue. But I also think that they were able to get away with it because SIGA hadn't been around for some time. But with SIGA in place, it will be difficult for them to get away with it. And government has interest in a number of institutions. In fact, had it not been SIGA, all of us, we never concentrated on that. So this AGM business, I served on the graphic board for 4 years. And we were concerned about the AGM. And there was a funny arrangement at the Graphic Communication Groups Limited, where the National Media Commission will have to appoint the MD for graphic. And as a board, we sit there, and they determine his conditions of service. So you cannot even discipline the MD. And when you call for AGM, who is going? Government is 100% shareholder. So that whole arrangement would have to be streamlined. And I think that is where SIGA comes in, and that is what they have started doing. And they are working closely with the Institute of Directors on that.
If you just joined us, we're having an all-important conversation about our, let me use the proper expression, specified entities that include state-owned enterprises, JVCs, and OSCs as well. Our three guests are Joseph Cudjoe, Honorable Member of Parliament for Ifia, as well as Minister for Public Enterprises, Dr. Eric Osae, Director General, Internal Audit Agency, and Mr. Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex Finance. And I've saved you for last. Because you run a business and you advise people who run businesses. You've heard what our situation is. As a nation, this is how we are running our businesses. Thoughts?
Okay. Good morning once again. First, I would like to congratulate SIGA. SIGA's done, it's congratulate SIGA, at least, and the president for thought-lighting the issues. And I'm speaking as someone who's runs a business. I started a business from scratch and grew it. I'm speaking also as someone who has direct experience of state-owned enterprises. So I know what I'm talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. First, as usual, nobody's taking responsibility. I think that the statements that have been made, what has been said in the press, is closing the barn door after the horse has bolted. Because I don't see why you need SIGA to be able to monitor the operations, because appointments are made and resources are thrown at issues. So SIGA, it's a red herring. That's number one. Number two, it's impossible for these state-owned enterprises to perform. Me personally, We should have 0 state-owned enterprises. It's impossible for them to perform because appointments to these boards are made on the basis of loyalty. By the time the person gets there, he's already done the work. He's not going to perform. Who's going to hold them to account? By the time the person is appointed, by the time it's made a deputy MD, by the time put on the board, it's on the basis of loyalty to the political people in politics, the political authority. Even take SIGA. Take SIGA as an example. That we're holding out to have at least started the process. Yeah. The chairperson is appointed politically. Is the executive secretary or director is executive politically. You have somebody who's appointed from the office of the president and 3 other people that are nominated by the president. It cannot perform, it will never perform. These state-owned enterprises, you might as well take a basket, might take the money, put in a basket and burn it. It's a total waste of time, and I know what I'm talking about. You know, we're talking about, a lot of issues we'll come back to, and this is not one of the things that we can pray away. You know, we live in a country where everything we say, let's pray. It's a classic example of, I remember I'd come on holiday and Ghana Airways had problems. And on TV, they were showing the board praying for God to intervene to help save the company. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. This is a company where the staff are richer than the company itself. And you are praying that God should intervene. It's a total waste of our resources. They will not work. Let me pick on some of the, the issues. Salaries. I don't have a problem with salaries. Pay the people what they deserve to get them to perform. And if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys
to work with.
Pay the people the money that they require to get them to work. So salaries is another red herring. The thing is that we have no ability to sanction them. We cannot sack anybody. They've already done the work. They're on the basis of loyalty. So they'll continue to waste resources. And in any case, what skin do they have in the game? 0. If I lose money, it hits my pocket. If somebody goes to a state-owned enterprise and they do it all the time, create a guarantee, create a contingent liability, what do they care? It's a total waste of money. And let's stop this conversation going back and forth, back and forth, back. It's a waste. Of course, it suits the politicians. They're able to extend political patronage. Because if you can't make me MD, why should I follow you? Of course, it suits them. Of course, it's also important that the state takes certain risks that the private sector cannot take. For example, in extractive industries. And that happens all over the world. But to invest in companies just for political patronage, to invest in companies where you are killing private sector, really is a waste of our taxpayers' money. I mean, here's a country where people are more interested in working for a state-owned enterprise than the private sector. Does it make sense? Look, let's deal with, let's not do this shadow boxing. Yeah. The minister is my friend. I'm glad that he's got appointments. A fellow accountant, yes. Right. Let's not do this shadow boxing. It's a complete waste of our money. And I have direct experience. Ken Thompson, I have direct experience. And I know what I'm talking about. You have some of the enterprises where half the time, the directors are flying to collect per diem. I mean, hello. And who do you think pay? You and I are paying for it. Because they create losses. And we have to pay for it. And when I create losses, who pays for me? Who pays for my losses? Come on, guys. Let's be real.
So what are you suggesting? Sell them all?
Oh, sell them off. What can we do? What's the worst that can happen?
Sell off ECG.
Break it up. You see, and it's a fundamental principle of anything that you do. If the people in charge, business, they don't have any skin in the game, it's not going to succeed. It will not fly. It's a fundamental principle. It's a fundamental. Why does America work so well? Everybody is trying to create business. Everything they do, they have skin in the game. And the state allows you to work. But it's not possible where I set up a company, using state resources. I put my friends on the board to manage it, and they'll perform. It ain't going to happen. Hello, because they are my friends. They've already contributed to my whatever I'm doing, and it's a reward. That's all it is. Break
That's
them
what
up.
you mean when you say they've already done the work.
Of course, they've done the work. It's a reward for they've done the work. I mean, either you were driving the person during the elections, you raised money, you provided water, you were cooking. They've done the work, and I say I have direct experience, so I know what I'm talking about.
So the appointment tends to be a reward.
Of course,
So if it's your reward, why will you come and break your back?
you've already done the work. You've done the work. You've done the work.
I see.
I mean, you've done the work. Why should you come and break your back?
Mr. Cudjoe, do you see this? Do you see the reality of what Ken Thompson is saying in your sector?
He's making a very interesting submissions, and I'm so excited by it because he's sharing experience. He says they've done the work, and the appointment is a reward. Interestingly, I can I know his voice on radio and his articulation and everything. When we met in here, he recognized me that I was sitting in deputy energy ministry as deputy minister, and he was on the board of Greatco, and an issue came up, and I had to help in resolving the issue. So he saw my performance in there. I think you won't mark me zero.
No, I'm making a general statement.
No.
So
I'm just
now that you have
throwing
removed
in-
yourself from it,
let's
talk about the rest of the rest of the
Wait.
sector.
I'm throwing in a factor, and I also know his drive when he was dealing with the issues of Greatco. Do you understand? So at least agreeing with him or not, I would say some would go in with the mindset of helping the system. They haven't done the work before going in. Some, including himself and myself. Because when he was on the board of Greatco, he was driven. He was very driven. He wanted to solve the problems. So some have done the work, some haven't.
But he's not
But-
attributing the failure to those who are doing the work. He says
Uh-huh.
that the public
Generally,
sector populated by those who are not doing the work.
I don't forget the problems he's talked about. When I decide to go from that viewpoint, I will even say it worse than he has done.
Then please feel free to tell us
No,
the truth.
I am free. I'm free. I've told you the problems. I have told you the problems. But today, all along looking at the problems, I decide to be in this space, to be part of the solution. Because the problem is not like a problem that God rained on us. It's a problem that you have to...
Man-made problem.
Exactly. Our own constitution talks about appointment of the board members by the president. So you see rule of law. This is cast.
Wait, I've heard this one before.
But
So
it is
are
true.
you saying that the
Isn't that
president... are you
No,
saying
isn't that true?
Yeah, so let's deal with that. Are you saying the reason why people are appointed as rewards is
No,
because the
no.
Constitution says the president must do so?
Wait. He talked about natural motivation. Natural your state do not finance politics, but your state wants somebody to be elected as a president, do campaign, election. You know the cost of election. Your state,
Yeah.
you don't pay for elections. So we have created a system whereby election campaign should be financed. Start from there, and you see the root of the problem Ken Thompson is talking about. When you are solving a problem, you look at the root. So I'm saying if somebody fetch water for a certain candidate and the person has done the work and he's been appointed as a reward, you have created a problem where the state is not funding the person's campaign. So
Wait.
once you go to that route, then I'm waiting.
Yeah. Okay, because it sounds to me like you're saying
Yes.
that the president has no choice but to use appointments to state-owned enterprise and specified entities
Listen-
as a reward
listen
to
to
those
this.
who fetch water for
Listen
you
to
during
this.
the campaign.
Your, maybe step down your logic. You are not.
Yes.
That logic is not.
Stepping down logic is very difficult for
No, I'm
and
saying.
replace it with
I'm
what?
saying that your constitution mandates the president to do appointments. I have been appointed.
Yes.
Are you getting me? I didn't fetch water.
Okay.
I didn't. Do you understand? And Ken Thompson was appointed. That's why I started from that angle. That you cannot say the president appointment is all about the work has been done. Else Ken Thompson himself, I don't know what work he did for the president. I don't know. But as for me, what I know is I went to contest a seat and I came in parliament. And the president is enjoined to make appointment. That's constitution again. To make appointment of ministers from parliament. And the president looked at competencies. I can show you my CV to make appointment. And I sit in here working, and my competency has never been brought to question. So you cannot say president appointed me as a reward for fetching water.
So let's talk about
That-
those
that is-
who,
that is
who
why I'm
were
saying-
appointed as a reward. Because you say they exist.
No, I am saying to him, you wanted me to agree with him.
No,
And I'm citing
you agreed.
example why I will not agree.
I didn't
with him.
want you to agree.
Kojo, can I-
You
can I- can I-
agreed.
can I-
You
you
are
understand?
next.
I
You are
understand.
next,
Yes.
Doc. But I want to
So
understand.
I
the
cited
minister
examples.
first.
I cited examples which will make me never agree. I know my case. I know Ken's case. We are here. The rest of the case, I do not know what somebody else may have done.
Oh.
For which reason Ken is making the statement he's making.
Right.
I
So
do
you
not
are,
know.
You are actually saying that you have no knowledge of any
Reward appointment.
Okay.
Because the people
Okay.
I see get appointed are competent to occupy those positions. That one I know.
Right. So why is the work not getting done?
If work is not getting done, then you diagnose the problem to be oversight, governance system. You know, we have state interest and governance authority. That never existed. I'm saying if you put down a company, any company, including Joy, and governance doesn't work, it will start, non-performance will creep in, whether you like it or not. So, for over the years, governance of state specified entities was simply not there.
Right.
You incorporate a company under the company's law, which says board, shareholder. There's a shareholder who responsible for constituting the board, and the board oversighting management team, and management team oversighting staff. This structure is what Ken's Dalex is following, and that is why they perform. That is what Joy is also doing. That's why they perform. And I'm saying this never existed since independence. And it's the first time this government has put in SIGA to represent shareholder, and then the rest will follow.
Okay.
Are you getting the point? So let's not just say because they have state enterprises have been non-performing, there's no solution. We are rolling out a solution.
Okay. If you just joined us, we're talking about specified entities, state-owned enterprises and the like, and their performance or lack of it. And we're trying to diagnose it and figure out the way forward. You've heard from the Minister for Public Enterprises, Mr. Joseph Cudjoe. You've heard from the CEO of Dalex Finance, Mr. Ken Thompson. You've heard from Dr. Oduro, Osae, who's the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency. And you're going to hear more from them.
Cudjoe, I've got a question for all three guests. It's a fact that most SOEs were initially created to fill gaps in the economy at a time when there were no private sector players with sufficient leverage to pursue such investment. Is it not becoming, I guess, maybe less sensible, really, that such interests are given to the private sector, really?
Or is it not time to hand over such interests if we no longer have the problems that caused the creation of those state-owned enterprises? That is basically what you're saying. That's a good question, a good place to start. But your text messages have been coming through. And look, we're talking about all of our specified entities, particularly state-owned enterprises, and their performance over the past few years. In fact, we can even go further back. It's just been bad. Let me give you an example. In 2020, Ghana's 52-year-old Grains and Legumes Development Board, which has 92 workers, recorded a total revenue of 2.83 million Ghana cedis. I mean, I don't even know if you can buy 2 Land Cruisers for that amount. I mean, Antimuni sells more rice in a year than this. But we'll pay all their 92 salaries without fail every month. So Kwame Sowu is asking this question. He says, look, why can't the state use the expertise of efficient hiring institutions like Pricewaterhouse, Ernst & Young, and so forth to recruit the best talents to run these state enterprises? This part of our conversation, with which we are wrapping up the issue, is looking forward into solutions. And I want to start with Dr. Oduro Osae, because he wanted to make a comment on the earlier issue of governance, and then you can give us your thoughts on the way forward, whether SIGA is indeed the solution to all of these problems.
All right, thank you very much. I on the governance issue, I think we may have to look at our laws again, like the Honourable Minister said. If you have a chief executive or a head of a specified entity appointed by the president, and the board is also appointed by the president, board-chief executive relationship becomes difficult. And it becomes difficult for them to even monitor the performance of the chief executive. So we may have to look at that a bit. And then also, we may also have to look at compliance with public financial management laws. You see, most of these SEs or specified entities see themselves as private institutions. They are more willing to comply with the requirements of the Companies Act rather than the Public Financial Management Act. Some of them, from where I sit, have just refused to set up audit committees, for instance. And audit committees are critical institutions to support the governance of these public sector institutions. So I think we may have to work to get them to comply or to understand that they have a dual reporting relationship. Insofar as government has an interest in that institution, you are required to report under the Public Financial Management Act and also report under the Companies Act. The next leg is about SIGA. SIGA set KPIs, and we need SIGA because we need an institution to coordinate and manage government interests. If we don't have SIGA, then you may have to appoint somebody from Office of the President to be attending AGMs of all these specified entities. But if you have SIGA, SIGA would coordinate it and compel them to organize these AGMs. Last but not the least, the Public Financial Management Regulations has specific provisions for these specified entities. One of them is the establishment of KPIs, and then also monitoring the operations of these specified entities. And that has been given to SIGA. So if all state institutions, and it's not only SIGA, the Internal Audit Agency, for instance, is an oversight body to make sure that internal controls within these institutions are working. But if you do all of this, and you have a chief executive who sees himself bigger than even the boss, where the chief executive can even report a board to Office of the President for the board to be dissolved, it makes pushing this chief executive to deliver on his mandate very difficult. So my point is, let us review our corporate governance laws. And this is where SIGA's corporate governance code becomes important. And the one they are working on with the Institute of Directors becomes critical. Some of these SEs are critical. We cannot hand them over to private institutions because of the national security implications of the work they do. Can you imagine handing over ECG to a private investor? You may not know where the resources are coming from. Handing over VRA to a private investor. Handing over BUI to a private investor. Handing over Gridco to a private investor. This is not to say that private investors are not critical. They are critical. But some of the SEs...
Other countries have done this, though.
Well, you see,
utilities in the UK are not provided by...
Yeah, but it will depend on the level of national security. Because in our case, if you hand it over and you get somebody from a certain country coming to invest a certain amount in it, they will hold all of us hostage. So we have to look at the national security implications of all of that. But my view is there are challenges. Let us rather resource SIGA. Let us change some of our laws. And let us allow the boards to appoint the chief executive. I think that is the major problem. With my experience at Graphic, we found it difficult holding the MD responsible for certain things, because it's a National Media Commission that even determines his conditions of service. At a point in time, we're going to use conditions of service there to make sure that the gentleman works. But I said, wait a minute, I have already signed that thing with the NMC. So you at the board, what do you have to do? So we have to look at board chief executive relationship well, and it is a basic corporate governance issue that needs to be resolved.
Mr. Thompson.
Doc, I agree with you some of the way, but a lot of things I disagree with. First, the issue of national security is a red herring. People raise those emotional arguments. It's a total red herring. If there is no skin in the game, there will be no performance. I know of state-owned enterprises that have as much as 5 deputies. Come on, 5. With the payroll gone through the roof. In any case, to start with, measuring performance in terms of absolute numbers is not measuring performance. Measuring performance, as we say we're doing now, say that my turnovers increased from 10 cities to 20 cities, that is not performance management. Performance management is when you're measuring your turnover against, or your numbers against your peers, or against certain variables within the organization. So for example, you've got to say, what is my turnover per employee? You've got to say, what's the cost to income ratio in the energy sector? Then you're talking about performance management. So, we've started, but really there's a long way to go. But I go back to my initial submission. Unless there's skin in the game, these things will continue to fail. And the most tragic part of it is we don't even appreciate how it has totally destroyed the economy of this country. I'll tell you why in 2 ways. First, our brightest people, they want to work with state-owned enterprises because they pay better. And when they go there, there's no requirement for them to perform. So we take good people and make them bad people. Number 2, because we support these state-owned enterprises, private sector cannot compete. And we continue to waste resources. Let's have a proper conversation and stop this shadow boxing. We've started, but let's have a proper conversation. Of course, it didn't start today, but excuse me. I can't say that. You can't say that, well, I only came yesterday, so it's not my fault. But you've been there for some time. Come on, let's have a proper conversation. But it's ridiculous in the extreme because state-owned enterprises single-handedly have destroyed this country. They have destroyed the country. Transport, health, name it. What else? Energy, natural resources, finance. Thank you. Government gives them guarantees, they give loans. They don't collect. They don't collect year in, year out. And if you go back, and Honorable, if you go back to Ghana's history, when these factories were set up, they were funded by the state. And then we had, the sea people will come and slaughter. But we had work and happiness. Work from Monday to Wednesday. The rest of the time, have a good time. But of course, let's move forward. Have we not learned from it?
We have.
Are we not learning? What kind of people are we? We can't pray ourselves out of it. We cannot pray ourselves out of this. It will continue to undermine and destroy this economy unless we deal with the issue. Let's get institutions where people have skin in the game and there's true accountability. And that security issue, Doctor, I disagree with you completely. Let's not bring emotional arguments. Security. Of course, somebody brings money from under their grandfather's pillow and you can't find it as a regulator, then you have failed. Are we more intelligent than some other countries? Come on, there are models that have worked. Let's learn from it. And so I'm glad that we are torchlighting the issue and we should continue to torchlight it. I'm glad the minister has had experience with him. Excellent minister. Excellent.
Thank you.
I have no complaints.
Thank you.
No, excellent. Excellent. Excellent minister. Yeah. Excellent. And but for so long as there's no skin in the game, for so long as they don't measure performance, they'll continue to destroy this country. They'll destroy it. What incentive is there for me to go and perform? I'll go and sign some agreement. If they take you to court later on, I've chopped my money. What are you going to do? Who has been taken to court in this country for an state-owned enterprise and they continue to make losses? And those people are living in the biggest houses in this country. Yep. Guys, let's have a proper discussion.
Okay, I saved you for last on this round.
Yeah.
Because I actually have something I wanted to verify just
Okay.
before I hear your solutions. So your ministry was established in 2020,
2021.
2021. How big is it? How many people work there?
Very good. It will shock you
Okay.
that I don't have a deputy. That's first.
Okay. No deputy.
Second, yes. Second, we are 9 from the civil service and 2 from secondment.
Okay. So altogether 11 people at
11.
your ministry.
Yeah, and myself.
I'm just
And the budget
the budget
for
of the ministry.
for the third year. I mean the third year. The total budget I've run, doing everything that has been done, is less than 2 million Ghana cedis.
Okay.
Yes.
So this
So
is
you
the
can-
question
you-
I'd
so
wanted
you-
to
This
ask.
is where I say the president is doing something different. Are you getting me? For all the effort that has been extracted from me.
If I may, because I would love to
okay.
hear your solutions and the way forward.
Okay.
But the reason why I asked that question is because if indeed everyone agrees that SIGA has made a difference,
Yes.
and SIGA has put in place everything that should have been in place all this time, and that going forward we will see better results because of SIGA, why do we need a ministry?
Oh, I will explain. The ministry, the role I play is policy. I am a linking pin between cabinet and SIGA, because SIGA Director General cannot sit in cabinet. So the policy oversight and the policy I roll out for the public enterprises makes me sit in cabinet, and I'm on EMT and I'm in parliament. So that is the value, the rule the president created this rule to achieve.
So SIGA would not work if it's
No,
director. Is it director?
It
The
will work. But the
Director
other-
General
other-
reported to the presidency directly.
Oh please, it can't. It doesn't work like that.
If I tell us why it wouldn't work. Tell us why that
But
wouldn't
should
work.
the president do this? Presidency do this? How do we call it?
Micromanagement.
Management? No.
But he does that for
In fact,
many
in
other
the
institutions.
public sector, every
No.
agency should be supervised by a ministry.
A ministry. So
There are many that we know are not.
No.
One district, one factory
No,
reports
they
directly
Is
to
that
the
a
president.
Ministry of
ministry. Under trade.
They are under Ministry of Trade.
exactly.
We've all
Exactly.
seen that turf war and how it ended up.
No.
Are we sure that we are still saying they are under Ministry of Trade?
No. That structure is embedded in the constitution, please. So don't forget, when you are managing not only in an economic environment and market, you're also managing in a legal and regulatory environment. I'm saying the constitution is there. It has to be Company Act is there, Public Financial Management Act is there, SIGA Act is there, Parliament is there.
So
It is all.
So SIGA needs these 9 people in your
No,
ministry. Otherwise,
So you mean
they
we are
can't
many?
deliver the results.
You
No,
mean
I'm not
we are
saying
many?
that. I'm just
Because if
saying,
you look
in
at the
fact-
work,
in fact,
the internal
to support
agency-
your point,
if
if
we
there
look,
aren't that many of you,
Yeah.
then maybe we can do without you, can't we?
No, because of the
but if-
because of the public sector legislative
Wait,
framework,
wait,
even in
wait.
parliament.
wait, your logic. I am following logic. So you're saying that if Joy is having lean staffing, then it means the fact that they are having lean staffing means we don't need the staff.
No,
I want to get the logic.
no. I'm asking
I-
whether SIGA
Uh-huh.
can operate.
Without a ministry.
Yes.
Oh, so wait. See, don't forget what SIGA does. What SIGA does today. The highlight on corporate governance, oversighting government interests, acting as shareholder for government enterprises. That rule, okay. If you care to learn, countries that have succeeded on using the public enterprise space to develop their economy and prop up the economy, that is the kind of oversight structure, and that is what the president has brought in to solve that 66 years problem we have endured to date. So it's a SIGA is the solution. Because in the past, Ministry of Finance had held the shares and done the oversight. But we saw what we've seen so far. We know the characterization of the state enterprises. We've seen even companies not doing AGM, not having even audited accounts. So the question is, with SIGA coming in, what are the outcomes that we are achieving? That is the question you have to. Is there improvement? Check the numbers. Check the numbers. I remember in 2017, if my numbers will serve me right, up to 2017 or 16, there was only 18 out of more than 175. Out of more than 175 state enterprises that could be reported on from accounting purview. In the state ownership report for 2017, go check. And then in 2018, that number improves to 47 or so. And then in 19, it improves. And then in 20, today, the last ownership report, I remember, is 104. Even reporting, how can you manage what you can't measure? That is, if a company does not prepare account. But with SIGA, every day, this is the subject matter. And the DG for Internal Audit Agency, it was alluding to even whole of country account, where we are always talking about liability. And we are not even accounting for our assets.
Cudjoe, let me add, you see, one of the important, when you look at the SIGA Act, SIGA is to assist government to even assess the borrowing levels of SOEs. And the competency bit that Mr. Ken Thompson indicated, SIGA is to even advise government on the appointment and removal of chief executives and members of the board. So if we were to implement the SIGA law as it is, government should not appoint board members or chief executives without recourse to SIGA. So that's where the competency bit comes in. So I think I agree with Ken. Let us rationalize the whole thing. Let us work around it. Let us make sure that we are able to benchmark them with the way private sector operators are operating and hold people responsible where they fail to deliver. That is the bit that is missing. Let us start cracking the whip.
And let me, on this note, Ken, let me address a concern you have raised severally. Skin in the game. Okay. Skin in the game, unless you want to say totally every state enterprise should be owned, should be sold off and held and owned and managed by the private sector. But the skin in the game problem, I believe in it myself. And because you cannot say Joseph Cudjoe should go and invest in a state enterprise like FDA, which is meant to deliver public service or public good, or DVLA, which is for public service delivery, or land commission. You can't say that. So the management there, since you cannot have a skin in the game rule, whereby cash from my personal account goes in there, and I'm an owner and I'm so concerned about their performance, the way I have solved it is to introduce public enterprise league table, which ranks their performance annually. And for the first time, the vice president said it, that for the first time, we have a metric, that is a measurement of how the managers, the CEOs, and their teams and board are performing. Because the maiden edition, which ranked 50 of them, if you are number 50, you have been thrown out, that there's something wrong. For two reasons, I come in and diagnose what the problems are. It may be personal performance, personal board performance issues. It may be resource constraint. It will lead to an action. If you need money and government is not going to write check again because your history and the market, your business model is not going to bring profit, sell off. You sell off. Either you invest, you invite a strategic investor, and then you bring private ownership control at the control level, and government has only minimal stake in there. But that's national security thing, he said, and Ken the DG mentioned, and Ken disagreed. I will rather put it, instead of national security issue, I will take it as, don't forget, we are in a free market economy. We are. And this market economy where the most important element of the market is pricing, which market evolves it. If you leave the entire economy, this economy, in the hands of the private sector, let me tell you the risk we run. Because we don't have laws against monopoly like other countries that can afford and say everything should go to the private sector. I'll cite industry examples. Oil and petrol, how do I put it? Petroleum pricing. If anytime you hear the other players kicking against oil and saying government is using oil to bring down prices, note that it is a way of managing pricing, if indeed government is using it. But I know government oil is not being used by government, but for the fact that the state has interest in it and vote at the board level and so on, if oil want to maybe shoot up prices or do something that is against the interest of the Ghanaian on the street, the state will have a mechanism. Bost recently has been accused or under the goal for oil that taking the import X%. But because if you leave everything in the hands of the private sector, I am telling you for a fact that the way our laws even allow private enterprises to form associations and control pricing, we are dead completely. That's the national security issue, the angle.
Okay. Can I respond to that?
But that is a fact.
Time is all gone.
That is a fact.
Minister, I mean, I really don't understand your point.
No, my point is that-
don't understand your point.
No, Ken,
Put
let me
in
use-
regulations. Other countries are. Why are you going?
No,
Look, in any case,
I'm
it's
saying-
impossible for politicians to crack the whip,
Wait,
which is fine.
Ken, let me
And this
give
is
your
an international
industry-
issue. That's number one. Number two, this security issue is a red herring. Let's
No,
let's
he
get off
said
that
national-
boat.
He said national security.
Forget
but I'm
about
saying-
national security. Put in regulations.
No.
That's why you have regulations. Why do you have regulator?
Ken, let me
No,
use.
no,
wait,
no,
wait.
no,
I'm
no,
clarifying something.
Yes, yes,
A
yes.
long drawn out.
I want him to agree. I want him to agree.
I would not agree.
Oh, you will.
No, I will not.
When I
agree.
mentioned
So,
treasury
Mama,
bill
you had a-
rates
you had a
and
question.
how
Who-
you price off.
Who sets terrible rates? It's the government.
No, government doesn't set.
Forgive me. Mama V has a.
It is market.
Government is exactly
You know it is
the
market.
market
Forgive
setting.
me.
Because the government is borrowing,
Let's,
and that's what sets the market.
Let's hear
But who
Mama V's
sets the
question
market?
and then
Okay,
we'll wrap
so
up.
so this question is directed at the minister. Do the and this is back to the appointment of CEOs. Do they sign performance contracts?
The CEOs.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Have we had
Not at the personal level, at the enterprise level.
enterprise level? So have we removed any CEO because of non-performance, for instance?
It is now that we are rolling out these solutions. I'm saying first, we have had the first maiden publication of Public Enterprise League table, rank them, so that you know which CEO is not performing. Like he said, performance management, you don't just do absolute performance management, you do relative. You get me?
we are now
So
going
to
to
sack some,
see
are you getting my
the
point? So
removal of CEOs
exactly, but
of
if 2
non-performers.
times, 3 times you are still at the bottom, nothing is improving, then you have comparative analysis to do with your peers and
Alright,
with.
We've got
Right.
literally 10 seconds to go. We lost 2.61 billion in the 2020. Yes. What is your target for the 2021?
A target to lose something? No.
No, what is your target? Just tell me, what is your
The
target?
thing is that I've explained 3 categories.
We've got literally
The-
15 seconds
Yes.
now.
So the we expect more efficiency in the other state
Any
enterprises.
numbers?
Oh, more efficiency. Use
You
digitalize
don't
your
have a
digitalize your operations. If you say digitalize your operations, we have a target that
Okay.
like DVLE. Can I sit in the comfort of my own home and do something? When I go in there, how fast will things be done?
You
So
don't have a target of how much profit you want to make or how little loss you want to make.
these are enterprise level differences. Every company has its own budget, financial
Big
plan,
picture,
strategic
there's
plan.
no figure.
unless
you're
I
working to.
accumulate
You haven't
everything
done that.
across. SIGA may have done that, not at my level where I look at policy.
All right. Well, we've been listening to the Minister for Public Enterprises. He's also Member of Parliament for Ifia constituency, which is in Second Itakradi. And that is Mr. Joseph Cudjoe. We've heard from the CEO of Dalex Finance, who is also a thought leader on business and economic matters, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, and that is Mr. Ken Thompson. And of course, the Director General of Internal Audit Agency of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Eric Oduro. Osae. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for your time with us this morning.